young there you go. We award 25 young environmental leaders with not only physical awards for their dedication in environmentalism, but also provide them with opportunities to grow as well. So, this is one of those opportunities. And another really cool opportunity that we provide top 25 winners is the Speakers Bureau. So, if you're interested in booking one of our speakers to speak in a panel like today as a part of an Earth Day celebration or even as a keynote speaker, look at our extensive list of speakers and their topics of interest on our website. So, our panel series is a six-part series, and it'll feature our 2024 top 25 winners, and will cover a number of topics, including sustainability, reconciliation, colonialism, policy change, and so much more. So, we are so happy to have you all here with us today. Just some housekeeping rules. We ask if you can keep your microphone on mute during the duration of the session. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. We will be getting to questions at the very end of the session. So hold them tight, keep them, don't lose them, because we're more than happy to have our panelists answer those questions for you. And as I said before, this session will be recorded. So if you want to keep your camera off, please go ahead and do so. So before we get started on the panel and introducing our amazing panelists, I wanted to acknowledge that the Starfish Canada's work stretches across the many homes of many treaties, unceded and unsurrendered Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit communities in what is colonially known as Canada. So I'm joined today from the unceded territory in the lands of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations people. If you would like, you can drop in the chat where you're hailing from today, what unceded territory or lands that you may be inhabiting. And if you don't know, you can always go on the website native-land.ca just to kind of see. It's always great to know what community and what people's land we're living on, and to acknowledge that as we navigate through these sessions and on all the work that we do. So, welcome to today's session. As I said, it's titled Equitable Innovation Solutions, and our speakers will be speaking in their language of choice today, so either English or French. So please set up the closed caption with your preferences. I shall be sharing in the chat the instructions on how to set up closed captioning. That way you can have them in English or in French, and the instructions are also in English and French. So whichever one is your preference, the instructions are there for you. Awesome. Thank you, Aish. Okay, so now we're going to get started introducing our lovely panelists for today. So first on our, as you can see on the screen, Aish there is showing how to enable translation for your speaking languages for the meeting. So here it says English, so I'm going to save it as English. So if I want something translated in English, it will be there for me. Okay, so now we are heading to our first panelist for today. So I would like to introduce Princess. So Princess, if you want to give us a wave, saying hello to everyone there. Amazing. So Princess is hi, Princess. Thank you. So Princess is a young environmental leader with the West Island Track Club Montreal and dedicated to reducing plastic waste and promoting sustainable practices. So she integrates eco-awareness into bilingual youth literacy programs and supports mental well-being to help youth manage eco-anxiety. So recognized with the Entrepreneurship Waves Award at Frequency 2024, she inspires a new generation to become responsible, empowered change makers. So thank you so much, Princess, for being here today with us. So excited to have you. So next, I'd like to introduce Abigail. So Abigail, if you want to give us all a little wave and say hello.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Abigail. So Abigail is a marine social scientist and a storyteller based in Nova Scotia. Abigail was also sharing with us earlier that it's finally hit some warm weather in Nova Scotia. So super exciting about that. Happy to see that it's summer starting somewhere, as weather here in Ontario is a little bit wonky. But based in Nova Scotia, Abigail uses creative storytelling to highlight the resilience of ocean-facing communities affected by climate change. So at Dalhousie University, she integrates story listening into research, transforms science and communication. And as a program officer with Nippon Foundation's Ocean Nexus, she advocates for equity in marine policy, focusing on the gender divide and climate impacts. So thank you so much, Abigail. We're so happy to have you here. And next I would like to introduce Diane. Diane, if you'd like to give us a wave and say hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Diane. Thank you for coming. So, Diane is an environmental activist dedicated to youth empowerment and mental well being in the face of eco anxiety. She co founded the Waste Zero Project, which cut school food waste up by over 57% and earned national recognition. She also contributes to environmental councils and research programs, including the University of Toronto's Cobweb Project, while aiming to expand zero waste across Canada. So, thank you so much for joining us, Diane. And last but certainly not least, we have Sophia. Sophia, if you'd like to say hello and give us a little wave.
Howdy.
Hi. So, thank you for coming, Sophia. Sophia is a passionate youth leader focused on sustainability, social equity, and empowering future generations. At 18, she successfully advocated for free bus transit for children under 13 in Regina and co led the city's energy transition efforts. So, now studying environmental engineering at the University of Alberta, she continues to inspire through research, public speaking, and environmental research outreach. Sorry. So thank you, Sophia, so much for joining us. And thank you all so much for being here today and sharing your thoughts on today's topic. So let's jump right in. We're going to share our main questions for the panelists in the chat right now. So Aisha's going to be doing that for us. And if we have time at the end, we will open the floor to ask any and all questions that you may have. I invite you to sit back and take in what these youth leaders have to say. If any questions or comments come up, please feel free to use the chat function, and we'll get to the questions at the end, as I said before. Sounds good for everyone? Amazing. So, my first question here is how do we balance urgent environmental needs with long term sustainable development, especially in the face of growing populations and economic challenges? I'll open the floor to anyone who would like to start. If you also like to take a minute to think about that question, you can as well. And I'd love to hear from all of you.
I can start.
Absolutely.
So I believe that urgency and sustainability are they're not opposites. They're like kind of on the same path, and we like often think that we have to choose from either, but like we can do both. We can lead to like innovation and like we can also and like I'll say an example in my work. I respond to immediate needs like reducing plastic waste in public sports place, and I also shift mindsets in the long term through climate education programs for kids. And I think that the key is to focus on solutions to grow with people and not the ones from like outside. And then that's how you balance the two by designing um like adaptive, like for example there are many kids that don't really know that like when you just throw away plastic, like what's the impact of that. And also like in Montreal you have places like Grand Potager in Verdun, whereas like there's urban farming in building food security and reconnecting communities with the land. And also in Univik, indigenous-led projects like those by Makovic corporations are developing like solar microgrids, I think, and solution rooted in local knowledge and long-term thinking. And also organizations like Wakikoni Mobile are used to like connect indigenous people you to their land and identity, and that's like also environmental leadership too. So it's not like ideas from like two outsides, it's like ideas from everyone and from community.
I think also what like Princess is picking up on there is the like inherent multi-dimensionality of sustainability. And so when I think about that question, the idea of like development and sustainable development and conservation sort of being at odds that we have to balance. Um, like Princess has mentioned, I don't think that the way I understand sustainable development, that those things do need to be at odds. We throw out this term sustainable development quite a bit. And so what I'm really trying to do in my own work is really like refocus in on what we mean by sustainable. So sustainability as a framework, as many people know, sort of have those three prongs of environmental conservation, economic prosperity, and social justice. And so I think in a world that is moving towards what we know as sustainable development, it's how do we make governance choices and choices in our actions that don't leave behind one of these three dimensions. So if we think of the way we've traditionally conserved lands and waters and what we know as sort of command and control conservation, being sort of keep everyone out so biodiversity can thrive. But have we forgotten about those folks who hunt on those lands for economic prosperity and to feed their families or to fish in those waters? Have we forgotten about whose rights we're infringing upon when we decide we're going to close off an area to those communities who've been taking care of it for time immemorial? So I think that in a future that is sustainably developed, it's that idea of like how can we continue to ask questions of ourselves and of policymakers and of other actors in this space that really get at who is being left behind and what is being left behind in these discussions of what it means to sort of develop in industry, develop in conservation, and develop sort of economically.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Princess and Abigail said. I think those are really, really amazing concepts that they've brought. Also, I think that we have to be really mindful that yes, there sometimes are urgent environmental needs that need to be addressed, and we do need to prioritize. However, we also have to be mindful that if we are addressing these urgent environmental needs, that they're not backtracking our long-term efforts that we're making. So there's absolutely no problem in addressing urgent environmental needs, but we also got to think about what we also need for our long-term goals and how we can achieve that while addressing these urgent environmental needs, right? And even then, within the growing population economic challenges within the long-term sustainable developments, there's also small steps that we're taking forward. For example, in my Waste Zero project, um, all we really focus on is taking those small steps forward and enhancing our work like that. And sometimes those small steps are urgent environmental needs, right? So just because we address urgent environmental needs doesn't mean we don't address the long-term sustainable development and vice versa as well.
Yeah. So I think that when we develop, we really need to develop with people in mind, and particularly people who have less resources than we do. And I'll just use this example of neighborhoods and communities since we all live in one. If we look back into the 70s, when a lot of communities were expanding in Canada, they were built around the idea that everyone would have a car. So we built these really beautiful suburban areas that were in these concentric circles that had a few exit and entrance points. And while that gives you a very smooth drive where you don't have to stop or yield as much if you're in a car, it makes it incredibly difficult to walk, bike, or use transit efficiently and effectively. And I was able to do a research project, a needs assessment with Alberta EcoTrust, as well as 13 different community partners. And what we found is that youth in suburban areas have such a harder time to access community resources simply because it's hard for them to get there, let alone with a parent, but by themselves. And that leads them to feel isolated. It increases the amount of depression and anxiety that they may face because they don't have that independent mobility. So that's why when we develop, we can't really build it on this idea that people will have the same resources as we think we will have. And that's the thing about development, right? A lot of them are made by white collar workers. They tend to have resources like cars or other things to their disposal. So they build around that framework. So that's why it's really important we have that community involvement involved, that we put people first, that we put things like transit first, that it's a forethought and not an afterthought. And I think when we start to do these things, that's when we start making a community that works for everyone.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. I love how you discuss the importance of having harmony between the two, catching two fish with one net and not prioritizing one over the other, but making sure we're really tackling the most important concerns and also looking at the historical, socioeconomic context when it comes to how we think about what the future will look like in regards to environment and versus long-term sustainability and turning it into environment and long-term sustainability. So I love that. So my next question for you is looking back at your journey, what has been the most rewarding project or achievement you've been a part of and why?
I can start with this one. So personally, the biggest project that I've been working on, currently I'm in grade 11, and I've been working on this project since I was in grade 9. It's called the Waste Zero Project, as Janiqua introduced earlier. So what we do is we focus on decreasing food waste in school communities through an incentive-based program. And this has definitely been the most rewarding for me because the entire goal of our project wasn't necessarily to make a huge impact. The impact would come as we did our work, but it was for young people, especially people who didn't have a lot of resources and a lot of exposure to what sustainability is, what environmental science is, to be able to see the impact that they're making just by working a little bit and being mindful of themselves. For example, we would show them how just by wasting, for example, 100 kilograms less per meal, you could decrease the overall school's food waste by 100 kilograms at a time. And over time, we've seen a lot of turn towards the better in both eco-anxiety and mindsets. And most of all, we've gotten a lot of recognition for our work, and it's allowed us to expand past the borders of just our own school. And we've been able to reach a lot of different communities. We've a lot of people have reached out to us, and it's really been amazing to see how everything's come together. And we're very proud of what we do, and we're very excited for what we're going to be doing in the future.
I can go next. So I think the project that I loved working on the most was making the bus free for kids, starting in Regina, Saskatchewan, but now across Canada. And the reason I'm so passionate about it is that it was something that I struggled with personally. When I was young, my dad was temporarily paralyzed from the back down, and it was really hard on my family. My mom couldn't drive me to school, and I had such a hard time because transportation barriers robbed me of friendships, opportunities, and dreams. And when I went to high school, I realized I wasn't alone. Newcomer students, kids from single parent households, and kids from low income families had a very hard time getting to school and to extracurricular activities. I had friends who were working 35 hours a week on top of school so that they could pay for their siblings' bus passes. And I had a friend who would walk 45 minutes in the cold to get to school, even though there was a bus line that could have brought her there because she couldn't afford the cost. And when I thought about my struggles and the struggles that other people faced, I realized that I wanted to make a change. So at 15 years old, I decided to recite a slam poem I wrote to Regina City Council, and that made a social change. Because first, I realized that people would want to listen to me, and the second part is I gained a lot of confidence in myself. And it's from that confidence that I was able to join the community advisory group and work with the city on the energy and sustainability framework. And in that framework, I was able to add public and active transportation initiatives that would include youth. It also allowed me to join and later co-chair a community advocacy group called Regina Energy Transition. And it's with this group that I led a 14-month-long advocacy campaign to make the bus free for youth 13 and under. And I'm so excited to say that when I was 17, it went through, and now 36,000 kids in Regina have free bus passes. And it's been a game changer to their mobility, to their well being, as well as to their families and reducing the burden on them. And not only that, but it was able to increase the amount of young riders by 260%. So much so that people in Saskatoon took notice of it. And now that's something that is a program there. So it's also free for youth 13 and under. And I realized it shouldn't just stop there. So I was able to take it a step further. I created a group called Better Bus Youth to go and advocate to create free bus passes for youth under the age of 18. And we're so lucky that this year it went through. Regina City Council is exploring a pilot program for high school students, so that gives 700 kids this fall semester free bus passes so they can get to school, work, and around the community. And now that I'm working with Get on the Bus as a program coordinator, what's on this side, um, I'm just able to expand how many more youth can get on the bus. Like in just a year and a half, we were able to do 100 community consultations, and we've helped 50,000 youth and 17 other communities get onto the bus. And like that's what it's all about. It's just one small action in the beginning of, okay, I want to talk to city council, and realizing the power that my voice had has been able to go so much further to do so much to help my community. But also it just makes me so excited because I see the impact that it has. There's so many more youth who can get to school, who can get to work, who can volunteer, who can access the many different concurrent youth investments in our community, like school and health programs. And it's just so exciting because that's what equity should be about. It's opening these opportunities for other people.
I can go next. And I've just had just the most wonderful time listening to Diane and Sophia, and I can't wait to hear what Princess has to say because I've read up and I had an opportunity to meet Diane and Princess at the Youth Environmental Changemaker Summit, and hearing what their story was so great. And so, Sophia, that was really wonderful. And I'm a little self-conscious about my answer now. But I think one of the most impactful for myself personally and for those around me has really been understanding the power of taking care of those who are doing this type of work. Everybody who does this type of work is inherently a very selfless person, wants to give, 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 and is thinking about others. And in my own sort of journey with mental health, and then discovering that a lot of my friends were also struggling with burnout and with feeling sort of eco anxiety, and now understanding what those feelings have meant, it's been such a privilege to be able to create communities and spaces like this very one, that really serves to amplify these voices, but also at the same time take care of those individuals who are working in this space. I'm so very proud. And it's a weird feeling to feel when you're in this work of pride because you know the work's never done and you're always trying to be more selfless and more giving. But I feel very proud of the community I've been able to create here at Dalhousie of individuals working in sort of equitable ocean governance space. But we are an incredibly diverse group. We're incredibly diverse. We're incredibly neurodiverse, we're incredibly gender diverse, and we all feel very supported in our work. And I think that's what makes us even better at what we do. Um, and so, yeah, maybe perhaps it's an odd answer, but I've really been proud of finding new ways to support others who are in this type of work because it can be a lot a lot to do and your mind's always running. But that's been a really lovely journey to be on and to learn how to support and create space with the privilege that I have of someone who's been in this space for a little while and has a little bit of leverage and power to be able to create opportunities for others and also support them as they make hard decisions and advocate for themselves and set boundaries when they need to set boundaries. That has been such a gratifying journey. And I think there projects I've worked on, all of these things, and probably less impressive than everyone else here. Could talk about those, but maybe perhaps to have a different perspective on the type of accolades and goals we accomplish as people in this space. It's some of the behind the scenes stuff that I'm most proud of.
Okay, so I guess I have to go next. So the project I'm most proud of is the one I did with my West Island Track Club in Montreal. So I saw that like in community sports, there were a lot of unnecessary waste. So I decided to take action. So at first I launched a campaign to reduce plastic waste. I encouraged reusable bottles, placing clear signage, and involving athletes and their families to like collect bottles and do fundraisings. But I realized that like if I wanted a real change, we needed like a project and innovation, not just like handing out information. And that's when I developed a mobile application that uses artificial intelligence to help track plastic bottles left behind at events. So like the idea is kind of like simple, but it's also like very powerful. You by turning data into like visibility, we can like help organizers to understand like where the problem is, and then we could also there's also like a solution like there's like water stations. It indicates water stations. It's better signage, and you can volunteer to like let's say there's a water bottle that's been forgotten, and then you scan it, and then you can like give it back to the person. And I think that this approach made the project very interactive. Like young people could use like they could contribute by taking their phones, just like uploading photos of waste, of seeing like water bottles. You could see like a water bottle on the bench and be like, oh, I can give it back to that person. And like if it was a non-reusable bottle, you would just like see the bottle, oh, I put it in the garbage. And but we didn't stop at like the technology. We built a bilingual education materials because the first one was only in English, but now it's like in French and English, and to ensure that like everyone, because I know that there's like a lot of French people also in the West Island, that everyone could use the application.
Wow, this is so amazing. I think all of the work that you have all done, I know, Abigail, you said that your answer might have been a little bit odd, but it's just so spectacular and it's fantastic and really inspiring to hear what has been moments of pride and moments of true like aha, like I'm really making change when it comes to the work that you're all doing, like Diane, when it comes to education and getting youth involved, it starts in community. Same with you, Princess, and the way that you've made the interaction and kind of sharing that duty of care to taking care of our spaces and reaching into a sector like the sports sector that isn't the most climate conscious as well, and putting some change there. That's so incredible. And Sophia, you too, really not only helping people to have a cleaner environment when it comes to transportation. And I know that you talked a little bit about car centric living and the way that towns and places are developed, but allowing so many students the opportunity, as you say, to build connections and even just to get to school. Transportation is less of a right than it should be, and so you working towards that and being able to get people where they need to be, I think, is fantastic. And Abigail, it's so important to have community. It's so important to have that duty of care to yourself and to others. So I love that you recognize that as a place of pride. I think we should all be proud when it comes to supporting people in the work they do, and also making sure that we're taking care of ourselves so we can continue taking care of the planet. So thank you all for those fantastic answers. My next question for you is, how does equity play a role in a climate resilient future for all? What does that mean to you? And I think we'll start with Sophia, if you're okay with starting, just to hear a little bit about what you think of this question.
Yeah, so from working on that energy and sustainability framework, what I really saw is that if you don't include the most vulnerable, then your climate action is less likely to be effective because it does two things. One, you'll have these people who are more vulnerable who will shoulder most of the cost, but on top of it, they'll reap the least amount of the benefits. And that's why it's so important to me that we have community consultation. So you'll see that with pretty much everything that I've done in the past and in new groups I join. So I try to make sure that there's voices from a lot of different people, especially people who tend not to have a platform to talk, be it youth, indigenous, people who may not be in the working part of society. It's very important that we have these different voices that are part of this, as well as, I guess, a way for them to contribute meaningfully. Because we can say like, oh yeah, we have a youth here or we have like a senior here, but if all they are is for the photo campaigns, it's not very useful. But if we're doing something like I want to go and build the skills in your hand, the confidence in your heart, and the knowledge in your mind so that you can meaningfully contribute to what we're doing, then that's the way that we can build equity and meaningfully create these different developments with the sustainability part of it. So I'll use one example. It's a mural, one that we painted in Edmonton. Now, I could have painted this entire mural by myself and say buses are good and buses help the community because I have my own story. But I was like, who cares about me? What really matters is the youth, like other people. So we worked with 45 newcomer and art students at Emmy Lizard High School. And these kids ended up painting a mural about how the bus is important to them and where it brings them in the community. And since we had so many newcomer youth, they were like, well, it helps me to go to these different programs like Action for Healthy Community. And this place helps give me my freedom and they help teach me English. Since we had so many youth from different faith backgrounds, they said, well, being able to go to the mosque, being able to go to the synagogue, all these different places are important to me. That's what they put on there. And what was beautiful was we had so many Indigenous youth who are part of this project that they said, the bus is part of my well being. So let's set up this mural according to the medicine wheel. We'll put homes in one section to represent belonging. We'll put sports in another section to represent mastery. We'll put the hospitals and Saskatoon berry bushes to represent generosity, and the bus as independence. And this is all the system, this community working together to create this one piece that's going to live for many, many years at the school. Just seeing that collaboration and the different aspects that came from it is so rich. And that wouldn't have existed if I said, this is my project and only my project, and I don't want anyone to be a part of it. So that's why it's so important that we have these different collaborations because it just amplifies what we're doing and it makes it so much better and something that resonates with so many more different people.
Next. And I really love, Sophia, that you're bringing in community examples because perhaps I'll bring in a theoretical example of sorts. A lot of what I do in my work is look about how academics are talking about equity. And spoiler alert, there are like 1,000 different definitions of equity, and everybody has a different opinion. And perhaps I'll share my 2 cents here. And what I'm really passionate about is pushing us past this really accessible and easy version of equity that we can sort of plug into our reports and plug into our policies to sort of check that box. Because an equitable future deserves so much more. It deserves so much critique and so many critical questions that we're asking of ourselves and others. So I like to think about sort of a really accessible version of equity. If you've seen the sort of the image where people of different heights are trying to see over a fence to look at a baseball game, and equality would tell us to give them all the same size box, and still people can't see over the fence. So equity, in a very accessible sense, would tell us to give people different size boxes so that they can see over the fence, and that's equity. And I think that that is a jump off point to what equity truly is. And what I'm really curious about in my work, and I think some of those pieces that Diane, Princess, and Sophia have gotten at in their own work is, well, how do we ask questions and create action that takes away the fence in the first place? The fence being systemic issues of racism, patriarchy, sexism, classism, all of these things. Why is that there in the first place? And a truly equitable climate future and truly equitable climate action not only serves to safeguard biodiversity and increase natural resource accessibility or increase economic vitality and industry development, but at the same time also in tandem with that works to break down those barriers that are impacting the way folks of different races, religions, backgrounds, ethnicities, sexualities, all these things are able to access and experience the world in the way that the sort of archetypical white man is able to access the world, for lack of better words. So I think what I'm really passionate about in this work and what I see so many young people doing is really trying to push us past that really accessible version of equity into a version of equity that is more critical, that might make some people uncomfortable, but in the long run gets us to a place that is truly more just and equitable for as many people as we possibly can bring into the way we govern and develop spaces.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Abigail, and also what Sophia said. And I think that equity is also not just a value, it's also like a principle, it's a design principle. To me, like equity is like when you start by asking questions like who's in the room, whose needs are invisible. And like once we know, we just have to like act, like we take charge and we can contribute to those who are in need. Like in the climate environment, equity means like recognizing that not everybody has the same needs and that like we don't have all the same knowledge and we can like uh contribute to everybody. And equity is like it also means that like you can honor everyone, like everyone's ideas, and especially in indigenous, no, I mean knowledge, like especially indigenous people who have a lot of knowledge, but we don't really listen to them. And I live and work in Montreal, where like it's basically like the metropole of like everybody says, oh, it's the greatest city in Canada, but also there are many people's needs that are not heard. And I also think that like by making space for youth and like racialized voice, as I said, for indigenous people who have been like systematically pushed out of the leadership, and it's also not about representations, it's about like co-creation, mixing ideas from everyone. It's not just those who are like the leaders, like everybody has the right to be earned. And like everyone's ideas should be contributed.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you guys have all said. I think those are amazing notions, and I love your analogy with the boxes, Abigail. I've heard that one when I was a lot younger in school, and it's a great, great one. To me, what equity essentially is a one solution does not fit all kind of mindset. I've had to learn that the hard way, definitely. So I really want to share a story that is one of my less successful endeavors in Way Zero. So, very recently, we've tried to expand to other schools. We've got a little bit of media coverage on our project, and a lot of schools have shown us their interests on our project. So we were like, yeah, let's see what we can do for you guys. And we've tried really, really hard to implement our project at their schools. And we are more or less successful now, but before we've had to face much, much more problems than we had anticipated at first. So I go to Appleby College for those of you that may be familiar with the area. And we have a designated food weighing system called Lean Path. And what I didn't really realize before are that these things cost a few $100s. Definitely way out of my expectation, but that's how it was. And so when we tried to expand to other schools, we were just like, oh, well, then get your weighing system and we can go from there. And what we got back basically was, oh, we don't really have that, or like we don't really have a reliable way of weighing our food waste. So we really did have to get real creative. We recommended for people to grab an empty bucket that like would kind of be what their waste disposal bucket would look like, fill it with water and then weigh that, and then just seeing how many buckets they dump out as their waste. So we've really had to improvise and work around things and find new solutions depending on the needs and the existing things that other people have and to accommodate ourselves. And honestly, it was such an amazing and invaluable experience because we really got to see what the rest of the world was look like and kind of live outside of our bubble a little bit and also see the importance of equity and how not everyone has the resources that we do and not everyone has the knowledge that we do and to reach out a hand not just to force everyone to go along our path and what we're doing but also to come up with their own tailored solution to their own specific needs, right? So that's what equity has really, really impacted me about. And as I said before, we're a lot more successful now. So learn from our mistakes.
Amazing. And I'm glad to see that, adaptation is key when it comes to making sure that programming is working. I love the themes that I'm hearing here about flexibility when it comes to equity. I love how you said, Diane, it's not one solution fits all. It's listening and catering to community and really hammering in what the needs are in the different areas that you're working in. So that's fantastic. My last question for you before we open it up, if anyone has any questions before we say goodbye, is in your communities, what are some of the climate related challenges that need more support? And then how can people help? And we can start with Princess, if you're okay with starting.
Yes, of course. So I think that one of the biggest challenges that I see in youth environmental projects are often like in the shadows. There are many like brilliant creative ideas come from young people, and I think that the idea that responds to like local needs with empathy and insights, but they're often invisible, they're underheard and treated as side projects and they're not taken seriously. For example, when I started leading the waste reduction effort at my track club, West Island Track Club, the response from youth and families was from youth and families were powerful, but even with that clear impact, it was difficult for me to find like structured support. I had no funding, no mentors, and no recognition, and that's the case for like many initiatives. And they don't like lack ideas. It's more like they lack the access to like like um build their ideas. And I think that another challenge is like the environmental education often feels that like they're disconnected from young people daily lives. like we learn about the sea levels, the sea ice, global policy or whatever, and it's really important, but we rarely talk about like the climate crisis as something personal or like even cultural, and many youth people feel like overwhelmed, anxious, and they feel like they don't belong in the conversation, especially if they live experience that isn't really reflected in the material. Like um that's why like my attention, like I said before, is about like um my application is bilingual. It's everyone can use it, even youth, everyone, elderly, and that's also like one of my goals, that it can be accessible to everyone.
Yeah, if I can quickly follow up with that. For me, well, I feel like one of the biggest challenges is getting youth involved as I work with a lot of the people in my grade a lot. As someone in high school, I'm constantly surrounded by my peers, by a lot of teenagers, and we kind of talk about everything in our daily conversations. But at the same time, just over my years at my school, I felt that honestly, in like sustainability in itself was kind of like a lame topic. It's it's kind of under and overlooked by teachers and students because, for example, whenever I say to some of my peers, I'm like, oh, I'm an environmental activist, I deal with food waste, and they're always like, oh, like you deal with food waste, like how lame is that, I don't know if you guys have felt this at all in some of your own communities. Yeah, but like they're always like, oh, like this is so lame, like why would you choose to do that with your life? And I'm like, guys, I'm trying to save your futures here. So that's definitely a huge challenge that I faced, just kind of like the, I don't know if this is the right word, like stigmatism towards climate change and like being a climate activist. Because a lot of the times the stuff that we do is invisible, right? We're making an impact, but it's not like it's going to be blared all over the news and over the loudspeakers. And that's a huge challenge that I've really faced. Um, and I think that if we could get rid of some of this kind of hostility towards sustainability, we could really get a lot more people in action on our side and working towards the same goal. Because ultimately, it is still your futures on the line, even if you think it's lame?
I love that, Diane, and maybe I'll jump in quickly. One of the pieces that I'm really passionate about lately is climate action burnout. And we are constantly bombarded with global conflict, the climate crisis. Or these are these things that we are, as empathetic people, we're constantly dialed in on, and we're constantly trying to do our best to make small to large actions. But that can quickly lead us to burning out, to mental health issues. Um, and so, something I'm really trying to work on is developing community and developing programs for climate action activists, climate workers, practitioners, folks in this space, especially young people. Not only looking at things like eco anxiety, but also that pressure and the burnout that we feel as those who take on the sort of gauntlet of, saving the planet, or doing our best by the people around us. So I would say the biggest piece that I see in the climate action space is keeping young people, especially, um, dialed in while still taking care of themselves. Because you can do amazing work and burn out very quickly in this space. And that's okay. And you're allowed to take time to sort of come back to it and think of yourself as someone in need of care and in someone in need of empathy. But I think it's those pieces that a lot of young people who are incredibly passionate and want to go, 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 and rightfully so, can forget about. And so I'm really working on building resources and spaces for those people to be able to connect with others in this space, to talk about the sort of conflicts they're facing and some of the feelings they have about their work, to be able to stay at this sort of level of action and empathy sort of all the time. And I can imagine a lot of us on this call are constantly in that headspace. And so, yeah, that's sort of what I'm seeing and then what I'm really sort of trying to focus my work on now.
I think that's a really good point, just because burnout is really difficult and it makes everything else like 10 times harder if you're just like not mentally good enough, like there to do what you need to do. For me, I guess something that would add to burnout is the lack of investment. Like for a lot of the different options and the things that we want to do, there needs to be investment in a couple different ways. One, you need people to buy into the idea. Next, you need funds typically to do what you want to do. And the third is typically you want some type of policy or some type of support that comes from our wider community, be it decision makers, be it policymakers, be it peers. We're all looking for some type of investment from other people. And for a lot of us, we're focusing on issues that are important, but they're not very, I would use the word sexy, like the bus. A lot of people, when I talk about bus issues, they're like, I don't really care. Like, I don't use it. Why does it matter? But once I start talking about the equity size, when I talk about the impact, then they're like, oh, so now I see why you're interested in it, right? But if they're not even there to be there for that initial conversation, they never get to see the next piece about why it's important. And I think that's something so many of us struggle with, especially like if you are young, if you are old, if you are from a marginalized community, there's just so many more barriers that can topple on that it can be really frustrating and hard to start. So if people are looking to help, I think there's a lot of different ways to help out. Um, and the biggest one is really collaboration. And I know that's something that's really hard to do. Like if you are in a marginalized group, if you are a young person, if you are an old person, if if you don't necessarily feel like your voice has power. And I know that's where I was when I was 15. Like my parents did not want me speaking at city council. They were like, Sophia, this is a bad idea. Like I'm Colombian, I'm also part Chinese, right? They're like, you know our backgrounds, you know what happens to advocates, they get offed, right? So don't try to do these things. You've seen from other people how bad they go. Like leave it to someone else. But it was because I had this really good teacher who was like, you know what, Sophia? If you really want to talk, I'll help you sign up for a delegation and I'll read over your poem. And just having that support and having three classmates saying, well, if you go, we'll watch you talk. And heck, maybe we'll give a presentation too about different topics. That was enough. That was like, okay, I have this little bubble of support, and that's enough that I'm not going to feel burnt out. And that's enough investment from the people around me to feel like I can keep going. And that's just one example with the emotional side. There's so many groups that give grants, like Alberta EcoTrust. That's one that I work with. They've been really good. FES, like Youth Harbor, that's another one. And I know as a youth, it was really difficult because it's like, ooh, grants. I know nothing about this world. But what's the really great thing is I was able to reach out and ask, so I know that you've written a grant before. How do I start? And I was really lucky that I had Jacqueline Lee Tam. She was someone who worked with climate hubs, quite a big part of it. And she was like, okay, yeah, I can explain to you how to start this process. And I had another person, Cameron Elser from David Suzuki Foundation, who did the same thing. I'll help you with this process. Just reaching out and their kind support to help was enough that, okay, I can do this next action. And that helped me come over this funding barrier. And then the people part, I found that once they were able to see why it matters and to see that there's actually other people who care this funding, it's a lot easier to go and convince them to be a part of it. And the thing is, like, I believe that most people are naturally good. Like, they want to do things that help other people. It's just there's so many options and so many different ways to go about it that it can be really hard for people to find where to start. But when we're able to work together and when we're able to collaborate, and when we come from a point of view of like, I want to work with you, not I'm going to stand outside your door and shout with a pitchfork, it's a lot easier to make change and effective change. So I think those are some of my point of views of what we can do.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for talking about, what are some challenges that need more support and the importance of having support when you're facing these challenges as well and how people can help. I really appreciate you answering all the questions that I've had for you today. Those are my questions. I know that we've got about 5 minutes left, so if anyone has a quick question, we have, I think, time for maybe one question from the group. If anyone has one that they would like to share before we head out for the evening and say goodbye. I'll give it a second. in case anyone wants to raise their hand or put it in the chat. Oh, yes, Genevieve.
Hello, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I have to ask at least one question. Like, you were so wonderful, you deserve questions. I have so many. It was really, really inspiring and just so impressive stuff. And what I really like about what I heard tonight is like you all, like at your core, believe you can be actors of change. And Sophia, you touched on that, even if like your own family were like, nah, don't do it. Like you still believe you can, make that change. And this is what we need, right? In the world, I feel like if everybody was like you, things would be good. Do you have any insight as to how to try and empower others? And I think you touched a little bit on that, like people who don't necessarily find it cool to like work on the ways, but it is. Do you have any insight on how to, bring people out of their sort of shell and they're like, there's nothing I can do to fix the problem and bring them into action?
Maybe we do like a quick sort of like 2 sentence thing for time's sake. I had a friend at the Youth Environmental Changemakers Summit, Tarek, say that one of his goals is to make climate work fun and make it something exciting that people want to get into. And so my first recommendation would be to have fun in what you're doing and find the joy in the type of work you're doing. And the other piece would be to bring really good people along with you. This work can be tiresome sometimes, and if you have really great people and a really supportive group around you, I think that's really all you need. And like Diane said earlier, even the smallest of actions really can set you up for even larger actions down the road. I'll pass it
Yeah.
on.
Okay. For me, really quickly, definitely a lot of challenges I said before with the people around me, with just the environment that I'm in. But what I found the most helpful to inspire change was my own confidence. And I saw that grow as I grew, definitely. So just, for example, being able to speak out about a topic that I'm really passionate in and being unapologetic about it, because a lot of the times I was like no food waste, and I'm like, oh sorry, I'm in your way, like just being like a little bit apologetic and like a little bit shy to speak up. But then I kind of realized that, oh wait, what I'm doing is actually really good, like, and I'm like, I should be able to stand up about this. I should be able to speak about it because I know I'm right. And just having that confidence, even though you're not directly telling other people what you want them to do, they are going to get inspired by you.
Yeah, I totally agree with Diane and Abigail, and also what Abigail said about like just having fun, especially like when I started like my work too. Like I was kind of like alone while I was doing it, and then the like mistake that many people do are like, oh, there's not enough people, oh, nobody's gonna support me. But I think that if you find the right person, like a couple of people, you can like really start having fun with it, and you'll see that like by time people will find it like cool, they'll be like, oh, what's this, they'll get interested, they'll join too. So like maybe not like the mistake that many people do, or they like discourage themselves before even starting. They're like, oh, not people interested. But I feel like if you like really um start with joy and then start with a little group, you'll just see that by time a lot of people will get interested in your topic.
Yeah, I think mine would be is distributive leadership. Don't try to take everything on by yourself and work with people's passions. If you start with someone's passion of I like art and you're like, "Oh, can you help me make a poster?" And if they know I don't need to have all the answers and this is a space where we can work together and it's not really like it's top down or anything like that, but like we're all kind of on the same page working on this as a group. It's really easy to get people on board and to keep people coming back to help.
Amazing. Thank you so much for all your wisdom and your wonderful answers. And thank you, Genevieve, for that fantastic question as well. I agree that they were all amazing. And I know we all have a world of questions to ask to keep the conversation going. So I appreciate you all also stopping right on time, too, when it comes to making sure that we share our ideas, and thank you all for coming to this session today and connecting with us, and thank you, Abigail, Diane, Princess, and Sophia, for being such wonderful panelists. This Thursday at 9 a.m. PST and noon EST, so Eastern Standard Time, we're actually hosting a Snack and Learn, which is a space to continue this conversation and build upon it. So if you are interested in talking more about this subject, please don't forget to register. Again, a big thank you to our panelists and for everyone coming to see today's panel. Registration for our next panel will open in late June, so keep an eye out for that. More really amazing conversation and connecting with more of our fantastic top 25 winners for 2024. And as you leave the Zoom session today, you'll be prompted to answer a really quick survey. So please take a few minutes and some time to give us your feedback on today's session as well. I thank you all so much to our panelists, as I said again, for being so fantastic and sharing your wisdom, your insights, your knowledge, and inspiring us all. And to all of our wonderful attendees and participants, putting your listening ears on and your thinking caps and learning and absorbing all of this fantastic knowledge that they impart on us. I really appreciate your time and being here to attend with us. And I hope you all have a great night. And also, if you'd like to send our panelists out with some really cute reactions like clapping or heart emojis, that'd be really fun too, just to give them a warm round of applause for the work that they're doing. Beautiful.
Everyone, it was so good to see you all again. Have a good one.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Keep in
Fun
touch.
to see everyone.
Thank you.